and as I beat PowerPoint to work here. So this is really the hot topic that we're going to look at is wireless security. Why would we think wireless has become a hot topic? Why is wireless almost now more important than the wired network? The wireless connects to the wired, but why is wireless so important? Because there's so many devices connected. A lot of them don't even have the ability to plug a wired connection in. If you go buy a MacBook Air, can you plug a network connection in? No. It's wireless only. We all have cell phones. We've all got devices that connect to this wireless network. And in fact, even at your own house, you may be surprised at how many devices are connected to that wireless network. My guess is you'll surprise yourself if you go into your router and you say, oh, goodness gracious, I have 15, 20, 30, 40 devices connected. My Alexa connects to there. All those little IoT devices connect. Your washer, your dryer. So wireless is almost ubiquitous now. It's everywhere around us. And it's got some holes in it. So wireless really has changed the way we connect. If I didn't have wireless, we had to still use a corded phone. Well, first of all, I could find it. I wouldn't have to hunt around the house trying to figure out where I've left my cell phone. But they're everywhere. Nearly everything we have connects wirelessly. From our printers, now we don't even have to hook up our printers. And I think the term self-fulfilling prophecy. But we need to figure out what kind of changes we need to make, what is best practice. And so we have more wireless systems than just the Wi-Fi. And so now we have all these additional ones. So how many of you have Bluetooth on your phone? Yeah, everybody has Bluetooth. How many have Bluetooth on a computer? Yeah, most of you. It's on computers. It's on all kinds of devices. We buy Bluetooth speakers. You think, well, how is a speaker going to become an attack point? Well, the reality is that speaker then connects to your computer, which is connected to the network. Same type of thing. We also have these near-field communication devices. And some of you may have used it. Has anybody used Apple Pay or Samsung Pay or Google Pay or any of the other ones to buy stuff? And I reached the tipping point. I thought this is going to succeed because where's the most common place now you can use Apple Pay? Where do you go to in McDonald's? Or where do you go to in Nebraska City? You go to McDonald's at 1 in the morning. You can actually use your Apple Pay to buy your fries at McDonald's. So now we have that near-field communications piece. We're having additional wireless pieces. So we talk about near-field. We have some low-power ones. How many of you have a car that has a tire monitoring system? Almost everybody now has one, and it tells you if your tires are low. If you go upscale, it'll tell you how much air is in each individual tire. Those are all on wireless. And do you think they built security in there? And the reality is, if it's a tire monitor, maybe there's not a lot of security needed, except is that tire monitor system connected also to the infotainment system, which is then connected to the GPS system, which is connected to the self-parking system. So we need to make sure that we don't have these things connected. And how do we start to deal with it? So the first thing we want to look at is our buddy Bluetooth. And Bluetooth is really pretty handy. Most of you probably use it to connect. If you've got an Apple phone, it's the way we now connect headsets to your phone so you can go to the gym and work out. You may connect it in your car because, well, I need to have music in my car or I play whatever. We connect with them with Bluetooth. And here's what's interesting. This is not the latest version. It's actually 5.1 or something is out there now. So we're already out of date. It does give a pretty decent signal. And in theory, it's pretty short range. But here's where we run into problems. So we have all these different devices. Most of you, I'm going to guess, have some form of a fitness tracker. Yeah, they're pretty handy. And I don't have mine on today because apparently I've decided not to measure how many steps I take. But we use them for all different kinds of things. So we have home entertainment systems. We have medical devices now. So now you can buy blood pressure monitors. And If you're a diabetic, there are diabetic monitors that are Bluetooth and will connect to your phone and do all kinds of things. All these are great. This really makes your life easy. Computer keyboards and mice. So if you travel with a laptop, you know I'm going to pick on you because you're sitting there with your laptop open going, nah, crud. So it's really handy because if you're like me, you hate the touchpads. And so I travel with a mouse that's Bluetooth. It connects automatically as soon as I turn it on. Maybe photography. You can buy Bluetooth. So I can actually take my DSLR and it's got a Bluetooth module in it. It will connect automatically to my phone or other wireless device, and I can actually upload pictures directly off of that really, really quickly while I'm taking it. That's a great, great thing. So Bluetooth sounds like a wonderful, great invention. And it is, for the most part. Are there any security issues? Yeah. So we have to talk about the two different types of connections you'll have with Bluetooth. So Pico, which really kind of just means small. So we have two devices, and whenever they get together, they go, yep, we're connected. And then we can have groups of those PicoNets. So in theory, my phone could connect to your computer connects to his phone, and so on down the chain. And we have a group then, or a scatternet. And so it's one of the issues is we have these odd little inactive things. So we also have, so this is the idea of those PicoNets. So my phone would be then the master in most cases, and then the active slave then is my car. Now, this is going to change because this is not politically correct any longer, and you'll see that we're going to change some of the terminology in here, so it's no longer going to be called master and slave. Not sure what they're going to come out with, but be aware that that one's going to change. So we have the idea of our PicoNets, and then we can connect those so we could have a giant network all connected together by Bluetooth. Well, that's great, except for when you sign into your car and your phone, what's the passcode for your phone to connect? It's only 4 digits, right? At most, it's 4 digits. And most of them are 0000 or 1234. Or I have not seen that one, but there's only, if I have 0 to 10,000, that's not a lot of possibilities. So is it easy that I can crack your Bluetooth? Yeah. And so, but you think, well, all right, Bluetooth's great. It can only go about 30 to 40 feet. Except we can do Bluetooth cannons, which I would like to build here, but the thought of building something that looks like a rocket launcher, because you can actually use a tube about 3 inches in diameter, and we could build one, and we're out here pointing something that looks like a rocket launcher at other students probably is not going to go over well in today's political climate. But we can actually get, in test cases, you can get a couple hundred of feet out of Bluetooth. So I can connect from a couple hundred feet away. And you thought this was a short range 20, 30 feet connection. And in fact, in my own car, seems to have a really great antenna, and my phone does really well. And so my wife and I are both paired on her car. And we're both driving to Nebraska City because we were making a weird Y at Nebraska City, one of us going to Omaha and one to Lincoln, and the phone rings. And from close to a quarter of a mile away, because I could just barely see her car, I took over her phone call. And it switched to, and I thought that was really great. And it kind of gave me that impression of, hey, this is a long distance thing. But it was also kind of cool because I got to see what she was talking about with her best friend about me. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. It was not a very great connection. It tried to keep taking it off, and I finally had to turn Bluetooth off. But the distance was more than what you would have thought of. So what other things can Bluetooth do? It sends our phone signal, but can I access data on your phone with Bluetooth? Can I get your pictures from Bluetooth? Are there people that maybe have pictures or images or text or other content on their phone they don't want to share? Maybe it's passwords, and you have a password file on there. So we have to talk about a couple of different types of attacks. So the first one, which seems like it would be really harmful, is called bluejacking. Well, bluejacking is really the idea that we're sending things to you. We see that you have an open Bluetooth. We see that we can connect, and we send content to you. So, you know those places we used to go called malls? Has anybody in a mall lately? You have? On purpose? All right, so we go to some place like a shopping center. They actually can install software that says, hey, I see you've got a Bluetooth phone, and it'll send ads to your phone as you walk by. Would that be creepy? You walk by the Claire's store, and all of a sudden it's sending you ads for earrings. Yeah. I'd say you'd walk by the Toys R Us store, but apparently those are no longer around. So bluejacking sounds like it's going to be really horrific, but it's really the idea of it sending unwanted content. So nothing's stolen from you, but it kind of feels a little bit like, somebody's wandering around in your living room because they're telling you things about where you're at. Now, the reality is what they are stealing is location data. Blue snarfing, though, the term blue snarfing is that idea that we have created an unauthorized access and we're able to get information. What about your emails, your contacts, your pictures, all of those things on your phone? Now, you may not be a target or think you're a target, but in an attack where somebody's doing something like this and they're sitting at a kiosk in the mall and they've ostensibly got a job selling you some kind of jewelry, but everybody that walks by, they're grabbing all their information, that's not necessarily good. And you can lose a lot of data. And we really haven't found a lot of solutions because Bluetooth was not built with the idea that we needed more security than that 4-digit passcode. And if you stay there long enough, can I cycle through 10,000 possibilities pretty quickly? Yeah, and in fact, there's sites that will rank them by which ones are there. So what's the solution? As inconvenient as it is, what's the best solution for Bluetooth? If I'm not actively using it, what should I do with it? Turn it off. Great. Not only will it turn off, but it will hopefully save your battery. Now, not all phone operating systems, though, when you turn it off, really turn it off. So make sure you're aware of that. So Bluetooth is a scary, scary item, and we really haven't figured an answer for it, so we'll just ignore it, right? Turning it off is really the best thing. If you don't have a need for it, turn it off. Saves your battery, and we all know that right now battery life is an issue. Most of us can't get through the day without finding a charger, right? So there you go. Let's figure out a way to do it. So one of the ways that they also came out with that seems a little scary is something called NFC. So these are, and you've seen them on the Galaxies, Apple's now got it. So we don't have to get very close. We got to get usually within a foot or less. And it's fairly low speed. It's great for contacts. Galaxies used to be able to, you could bump them and you would exchange contacts and it was pretty handy. So it's really great for a lot of things. And they do have more security built in to the idea of a NFC because they really thought it was going to be capable of doing payment. And so those payment systems are really pretty handy. I actually like Apple Pay. I hate to admit it, because while I carry an Apple phone, I'm not an Apple fanboy, but it actually works pretty well, and I can get things deducted automatically, and so those point-of-sale systems actually work really, really well. So one of the things that in theory we might do is I might store all my credit card information in a wallet that's then dealt with using NFC. I haven't quite got there because I'm kind of paranoid. I've had enough credit cards stolen, I'm not sure I necessarily want to do that. But the best example looks like this. You go to McDonald's, and especially when you're inside, it'll actually say Apple Pay right on the system. There's a lot of other versions coming out and different companies. Samsung has tried their own, Google has got their own, but so far it seems like the Apple Pay system seems to be the best. If Apple Pay were available on the Google or systems, it would probably be a significant winner. So it is dependent on which system you're using. So what kind of things can we do? Well, because we've now got all kinds of really smart devices we can use, like skimmers. So can I put a credit card skimmer type device on there and actually get that? Yeah. And so we do have to be worried. One of the things that is encrypted, though, is that data communications. Correct. It actually does. Correct. Yep. You put your card information for your card is stored in Apple's cloud, and then when you sign to pay something, it processes it then through that system. So you don't have to pull out your credit card. So all you need is to walk in with your phone. That's the point. Is people are getting to the level where all they carry is with their phone with them. You don't have to carry your other information. In fact, we recently had a state, and I don't remember off the top of my head because I was just reading about it. We have a state that has legalized your driver's license to be only on your phone if you want it to be. So again, you're carrying only your phone. So it makes life easier if that's all you have to do. But what do we need to protect against it? Well, the best thing, just be careful. If something looks hinky, might be careful about using it at things like gas pumps not right in control of somebody, because I think we're going to have skimmers where they can actually intercept that. And the idea of if I lose my phone, I lose all this data. So what do I need to do? I need to password protect my phone so that if I lose my phone, it's useless to somebody else, right? And I can then invoke, if worse comes to worse, I can invoke a remote wipe. And we've had students on campus have gotten their phones stolen. In fact, we had one stolen right out of this lab, actually. We need to figure out a way to deal with that. And Apple seems to work really, really well on that, the lose my phone feature on the Apple. But if you don't enable it, if you don't have a password on there, all that information is vulnerable. So a lot of this is common sense, making sure that you do the proper things. Does it take more time to unlock your phone? Yep. But does it make it a little safer? Yep. So another type of wireless that we run into, and by far the most common, is actually Wi-Fi or wireless networks. And they have the greatest distance, they have the greatest capability for speed, and we can send a huge amount of data over a wireless network. At your house, if you don't have wireless, I don't even know how I would live. Everything in my house is connected wirelessly. Most businesses have some form of wireless, so if I go to Omaha, there's wireless everywhere. We can send data. Now, the distance in here is a little optimistic that we can really get 450 feet from one device, but it's possible. We have some long-distance connections where we have actually sent a signal to and from and got internet from Hamburg, Nebraska, sitting on the top of the Hoyt Science Building. Not very fast, and we took some specialized equipment, but we were able to send about 15 miles back and forth with Wi-Fi. Again, connections on both ends, and the amount of data we can get out of there, and the fact that we look at them and they are unprotected is scary. So, let's talk a little bit about some of the nomenclature you're going to run into. So, yes, the IEEE dates back to 1884. Not really relevant or what we care. But what they do is, IEEE is who controls some of the standards, and you see a lot of stuff in 802 dot something if you're in the networking class. 802.11 stands for wireless networks. Wireless local networks. And so the latest standards then, when I look at 802.11, so the latest standard if I go buy a wireless device is AC. So if I look at my chart out of our book, which is already horribly out of date, it does list AC, does tell us a little bit about it, not necessarily up to date because there are some faster modalities, but we can look at a lot of different things. And one of the scary things, if we go all the way up to G, which was out, and that's what we started our campus with a few years ago, G only really has 3 channels. There's 3 channels that you can use in G. We move up to N, and part of the advantage to N is it adds that second frequency, that 5 gigahertz frequency. If I didn't have that 5 gigahertz frequency, I'm at 3 bands. And so if you've been in a crowded apartment, anybody here live in a crowded apartment growing up, and you look on your Wi-Fi and there's like 37 different ones listed? Yeah. Well, the reality is because they overlap, you're not going to get very good speed because you're all competing for that same little piece of bandwidth. So the best thing I'm going to tell you in terms of speed, if you want the fastest Wi-Fi connection, use the 5 gigahertz model that's available. So if you have the choice on your home router, and a lot of them do, where they have a 2.4 and a 5, use that 5 gigahertz. And we'll get into some more detail on there. The 5 gigahertz is much, much faster. It doesn't reach as far. It has a less of a range, but it's much, much faster. And so you can even see that on our listing here when they say, well, outdoor range, 460 feet for the 2.4 or 140 feet roughly here. So you can almost do it about a 1/3. And they're doing meters to feet, but that's about the same comparison, quite frankly. You get about 1/3 the range out of that 5 gigahertz. So it's kind of an interesting thing to look at. They measure that speed, and the other thing that they will lie to you when they sell you this devices, they measure that speed. They say this device can connect at 500 megabits per second, or whatever speed they sell it to you. They measure that speed at 6 inches. The further you get away, that speed drops off very, very quickly. So, yes, in theory, you might get some kind of speed of 500 or a gigabit or whatever it is they're trying to sell you, but the reality is much, much less. So take those speeds with a grain of salt. In either case, the problem with Wi-Fi is this. So we need an access point, and an access point has an antenna, and it sends the signal, and we have an access point on our computer, and it receives the signal and retransmits it. So that access point sends that over the space in the air. Can I stop that signal from going anywhere? No. On a physical cabled system, I can physically put the cable where I want it. But when I send a signal out in the air, do I have any way to really stop it? So anybody out there is able to see that signal, and they're able to pull and receive that data that I am sending, and that the access point is sending back and forth to me. Great. So if I'm sending data, everybody can read it. Most of you have probably heard a scanner before, right? You guys listen to the police band scanners every once in a while? Not while you're running from the cops, hopefully. I'm looking at you, Weston. We heard the stories. So we have this hardware, we have the software. We send out that signal, and if it's not encrypted, holy cow. Anybody can see everything we have sent and everything we have received. So, yuck. That's not really good. So I have a device here, and I'm going to pass that around. So just so you guys in class can actually see what one looks like, this is probably just very similar to what you have at your house. It plugs in. In that case, it's actually plugs into your phone line. That one's got an adapter for a DSL connection, but they look very similar for cable modems or other software. So it's got a couple of antennas hanging out of it. That device not only is an access point, but it actually forms a router and some other things. So that access point, which you see going around, is how we connect to our network. If you look out in our hallway, you'll see devices with little blinky lights. There's, I think, 3 of them down our hallway. That's the access points for the campus. And there's actually, I think, is it 129 now after their latest review? There's well over 100 access points on our campus. And they connect to your network. So when I go to Go Blue, it connects onto that network. So in a lot of systems, we see something like this. You see this access point, it connects to different devices, wired, wireless. So we can connect into our network. And right now we're thinking, oh, that connection has no security at all. That's kind of frightening. So at my house, I have something very similar, but we call it it's also got a router built into it. And so that's what I'm actually passing around. It connects to the internet. The internet connects both wired and wirelessly to one device. And you can pick those up. The one I'm passing around there was about $50. You can pick them up very, very cheaply. Most of you have done that. You went to Walmart or Best Buy or wherever it was, and you bought a router. And you bought a wireless access point. And hopefully you talked about security or thought about it when you set that up. So for your home, these devices are really, really great. So they have an access point. They include a firewall. They've got a router. They've got a DHCP server. They've got all the pieces they literally plug and play. If I buy an access point on the corporate side, it plugs into our network behind our firewalls, and they're a standalone device. And so an access point, here's kind of the weird thing. A standalone access point will run anywhere from about $300 to well over $1,000 for the access points we use commercially. But I can combine all these pieces for $50 for my home use. So there are some differences, and a lot of those differences are security and the number of clients that they can handle. So the access points from Aruba that we have in the hallway can handle 50, 60, 70 clients at one time. If you connect 50 devices to your home router, you know what it's going to do? It's going to go, I can't help you. Most of you wouldn't have a fast enough internet also to do that. So this wireless, whether it's your home router, whether it's an access point, gives us a problem. It gives us a fuzzy edge. So we don't have a way to defend against things coming in because we don't have that wall. Nobody's got a door that says, hey, I'm going to lock that. And in fact, you may think it's great. I can see my wireless when I'm out in the yard. But it's also really great for your neighbor. Your neighbor doesn't have to buy his own wireless, right? He can use yours. So this is what we talk about when you see that term hard edge. So I don't have anything out there open to the outside world. But with wireless, I do. And so wireless gives us that fuzzy edge, that blurred edge, and we don't have any way to stop it. So here's our blurred edge. We've got all these things are protected. We've got our, people attacking us from the outside. And sometimes it doesn't take a rocket scientist to break into some of this network. So some of the things we have to deal with. Rogue access points, something called evil twins. How do I not intercept your data? Replay attacks, denial of service attacks. Holy cow. Wireless can be really scary. And if we don't take some basic measures, so a rogue access point. So, in your college dorms, and some of you are still in dorms, they say you cannot have a wireless access point plugged in. And the RAs will yell at you if you do, right? You guys don't care? We can tell that they're on their network, and then they'll probably go find them. So, an unauthorized access point. In other words, you go to work, and you decide, I'm going to take my home wireless, and I'm just going to put it on at work, because, nobody knows, and I want to be able to use my iPad at work, and they won't let me. Well, what that does is that opens up that entire attack vector. And so a couple of years ago, I'm staying down in Kansas City, Missouri. And I was in a Hilton Garden Inn, nice hotel, wrong part of town. They had rebuilt, and I was down actually doing some work with the EPA at their headquarters. There is a bank that shall remain nameless located next door. And in my usual state of, I'm too scared to go outside of the door at this place, but I'll hop on the internet and see what I can find. And to start, it started with I wasn't wanting to pay $10 for internet at this hotel. So I'm, of course, searching for an open Wi-Fi access point. Well, let me see what I can find. And I thought, there's a bank. Maybe they'll have a guest access. But I find one, and it says D-Link. I'm like, oh, jackpot. And it was not, had no protection at all. None. Zero. I was able to connect. And I had a good signal in my hotel room. And so I decide to do a little snooping when I'm in there. Don't leave a wireless access point open for me. It's not good. And I'm snooping, and lo and behold, somebody at this bank next door that shall be remain nameless had decided that it was a great idea in their office to plug in this home wireless access point / router for whatever reason. That particular device then, I could see their computer then. But not only could I see their computer, I could see the entire corporate network in that building. Now, should that network have all been protected? Yeah. Everything should have been tucked away, hidden, safe, secured, encrypted. But they thought they're safe because they're inside their hardened edge. And guess what? It wasn't. So, I took some screenshots, and through a semi-anonymous email, I emailed said bank that shall remain anonymous. And I said, you might want to look into this. In the meantime, I'm watching Netflix or whatever on their account. I ended up having to go back about 3 months later. I'm curious, because, I am. I still don't want to pay $10. Network's still up. Now, from that network, I could access almost everything they had on their system, quite frankly. I could print documents. And in fact, I printed them some hello from your neighbor at the hotel next door documents. I could see a lot of shared drives. I could see information. I could see files. I could see folders. That's the danger of a rogue access point. Because it wasn't encrypted. There was no protection on it. It was pretty easy to get in there. And in fact, it gets even a little worse. Because that rogue access point they'd installed, they didn't even bother because they just got it at Best Buy or wherever they bought it, plugged it in, didn't change an administration password. I could actually log into the router and make myself all kinds of exceptions and do all kinds of things with it. So I could set up a VPN so I could get into that network from anywhere if I wanted to at that point. And I could have done that in the first 3 minutes of sitting down in my hotel room. That's how dangerous rogue APs are, and that's why we need to look at them. So this is a document, kind of shows that idea. Notice then, once I'm inside that network, I can do a lot of damage. So once I've gotten inside their network, could I have made myself credentials? Yeah. I didn't. But right now, the average time it takes somebody to detect that you're inside their network is 191 days. By the time you figure out I'm in your network, I've got all your data. I have every piece of your data. I own your system. I can tell you and lock you out of your own network in 191 days. Open access point. Oh, no. So the other piece that's kind of creepy in here is this idea of something called an evil twin. So maybe the bank had a legitimate website and a legitimate email. Say something like Go Blue. And we're going to actually show you how easy that is to set up. We're going to set up something like Go Blue. And your computer, you go, oh, Go Blue, that's a great network. Let me just log on to that. But am I really logging into Go Blue? Do I know or not? What if I'm at an airport and I log into a wireless network and it's called AT&T 3? Ooh, that looks like AT&T's network. Must be their third router down here. Going to log in. And if I do that, even if, we're going to talk about all the encryption pieces, but even if I manage to encrypt my connection from this laptop to the evil twin device, it doesn't matter because I can still get all your data. And so that's one of the other most common things we do is we can intercept your data because now we can see it all. So if it's not encrypted at all, I don't even have to worry about that. I can just grab it from any open access point. And so we can grab a wireless card and I can get your data and we can see everything that's being transmitted if it's not encrypted. And we can packet sniff that, and we'll show you some tools for that. So we can grab that. If I'm an evil twin, I've got all your data. You just thought it was encrypted. So if I can get a hold of it and I can create a session and I look like I'm Go Blue and I set in the middle of that, so we also call it a man-in-the-middle attack. So I put a wireless device up that you connect to and then that device connects into Go Blue. I replay that in the middle. So I grab all your data and I send it back and forth. But in the middle, I'm sitting there and I am taking every piece of your data that you're sending. So you are sending credit card information. Guess where it goes? You're going to send passwords. Yep, right in the middle of that. Because I'm now intercepting everything and relaying it to the original. So we'll show you how easy that is to set up. And in fact, if you want to buy a kit to do it, there's actually kits you can buy. You don't even have to go through any hardware, software setup. You can actually buy a kit that'll do it all for you. Oh, that's great. They're very small. You can put a battery, you can put a laptop, you can put a wireless device, you can put it in a backpack, set it in an airport, scarf data all you want to. Great. But luckily, nobody would ever do that, right? So the other thing we can do is we can actually do what's called jamming or spoofing or denial of service. So in other words, we only have a limited amount of bandwidth, and we can actually disrupt communications. Well, why would we want to do that? What is the point of that? Most of the time, that is a way that we can disrupt. So maybe we get fired by a company, and we know that they connect everything on wireless. We want to spoof them so it brings their company down. So it's one way we can do that. So it's a little less useful or less used, but it's still pretty scary. So what do we do with these things at our house? What do we do with these things we use at small businesses? Because the number of small businesses that are sitting behind a router, just like that one I passed around in class, that's sitting at $50, pretty scary. Pretty scary. So what can I do? I can get my device. I can lose data. Maybe they can actually send malware through that device. And actually, quite frankly, what's actually more scary right now, you don't change those usernames and passwords on that device you hooked up. There are actually pieces of code that we can actually go out and we can run on your wireless router. Your wireless router is actually now infected. If everything you do goes through that router and that router's infected, I can steal your data. I can use your router to go infect other routers and create a giant botnet. And so that injecting malware is becoming more and more important. So I can actually use your router that you didn't secure, that doesn't have updates. Because how often have you went out and updated your router? Has anybody in here updated your router? Ooh, one of you has? Great. The rest of you guys are all in trouble. You're running that router just like it came. And in fact, a lot of companies never update. So there's been a lot of security issues. Now we're able to sit there and run code on there. And you can reboot your router and the code goes away and then it gets reinfected as soon as it comes back online. And we inject malware. And so the most common thing we're injecting right now, you guys all heard of bitcoins and cyber currencies? We can inject malware to create a giant botnet that we can mine for coins. And we don't have enough class time to go through the whole coin mining piece, but it's another way that somebody is generating revenue from your computer. So your computer's infected. What you'll notice is it seems very slow. And if you look at it, it seems like it's running a lot, hard, spinning, because it's processing and grinding away, charging up your electric bill, wearing out your computer for somebody else to make some money. So there is a term called war driving. And it doesn't work very well in Peru, I'll tell you that. But war driving is searching for signals that you can see. And so if you're in a larger city, so if we went to Omaha, downtown Omaha, and we started war driving, and you can do it from a car, a bus, or whatever you're on, there is actually software that will assist you with this. You can do it actually from your phone if you have a Google device. The Apple Store doesn't actually sell you the war driving device anymore, but you can get around that if we need to. But originally, people would walk around and they would mark on the street, hey, there's an open wireless access point. So now, it's all done electronically. It's mapped by GPS coordinates, and you can actually look online at war driving sites, and you can figure out where all these open access points are. And you'd think, hopefully I impressed on you guys that leaving your wireless without any form of protection was really, really bad. But you would be amazed how many people we find with open wireless access points. And so the last time I saw anybody go through a bigger city in New York City, I believe it was in one of the boroughs, they hit almost 10,000 sites, 10,000 different wireless access points driving around. Over a third of them were open wireless access points still. Yikes. Yikes. So it's kind of like you've got a key in your door, but you just leave it hanging out there in the front for everybody to walk in your house. Not very, very great. So there's some of the pieces, but now notice all those pieces? They're all combined into our smartphones, aren't they? Or a tablet or a laptop, and we can do all of that really, really easily. So let's talk about vulnerabilities. So the first thing that happened, the people that created the wireless said, you know, I see we have a problem. And so let's create a fix for it. And we created a fix called Wireless Equivalent Privacy, WEP. And WEP should really be pronounced WEEP, because it was not very secure. And so it was a first try. And so you transmitted those communications back and forth, encrypted, and that part really works. But remember when we talked about that key, when we had a key that we had to share back and forth? This key is vulnerable when we create that connection. And so WEP, you can actually break WEP in a couple of hours pretty easily. And so we can find that pattern, and if you have a little bit of traffic, you can break that. So a couple of years ago, our library, you know those laptops you can check out at the library if they're still doing that? Did they finally quit that, I hope? Do they still do it? Oh. Does anybody go to the library? Apparently not. So they used to have laptops they checked out, and so they were older and they used WEP. And so we went over just as a project, and we went over to see if we could break WEP. And it took 13 minutes for us to break and figure out that the password, if I remember, it was like Peru 1867. It was really tough. Now, nothing horrible over there, but it's a sign of something bad. WEP, if you have hardly any traffic at all, you can break. So it's still around. It's better than nothing, but don't use it. So we've got another one, and a lot of routers come with this idea in it. And I don't remember if this one does or not. Some of them do. So this is, maybe? Power button, it does. All right. So this one's got, if you notice on the back, it's got a PIN number. And it says, here's a button, and if I push it, it resets your security code to that PIN number, and we can create a one-button connection that in theory is connected and secure. Now, great. We pushed a button, we have a PIN number, but there's enough flaws in it that if you're using this, you're really not much better off than using WEP. Great. Well, there's got to be a better way. All right, MAC address filtering. So a long time ago, I talked about every device has a hard-coded address in it. And that hard-coded address, what if I said only those devices I know? And in fact, on the back of this, you can actually see where it's got a MAC address. And it's a long string of characters. It's unique to this device. It's hard-coded into the Wi-Fi set. Every device has one. So we could say, all right, only those devices we actually know and we know their MAC address can get on my network. Well, it's really hard to manage because I have to get the MAC address for everything. So think about here at the college, you guys move into the dorms, and I have to get a MAC address from everybody. But there's even other problems. We don't exchange them in an encrypted manner. So I can see all those approved addresses being shipped around, and all I have to do is spoof it. So it's called spoofing if I grab somebody else's MAC address. And here's the best part of all. If I really want to do that, this little guy here can actually spoof an address. It's a service and a convenience, and it's set up in there so I can spoof an address, because if I get something like a cable modem, I have to sometimes do that because they don't want you to have your own Wi-Fi. So it allows you to spoof an address. So great. That way doesn't work either. Great. So MAC address filtering, it can be useful, but it's not foolproof by any means. Well, all right, I know. One of the things inside of there is I can turn off where it sends that address. So where it says go blue or whatever you set yours up to, mine actually right now is set up to like DEA drug van number 7 or something in my neighborhood. So it's called that service set identifier, that SSID. That's what says, here's go blue. All right, so we can turn that off so it doesn't transmit that. And some websites still say, hey, it's a great security thing. The reality is, it's not. I can still find out your SSID. And we'll show you how we can do that. It's pretty easily done. So, what are we going to do? So there is some good news. So there is a newer security standard called WPA. The latest version, WPA2, and then some incremental piece. WPA2 is safe for the most part. If you have your router secured, if you do all the other steps, WPA2 is the best we've got right now, and it's pretty darn good. Can it be broken? Everything can be broken. But WPA has a couple of different models. So the personal model, or the pre-shared model, has a key and it ships it out encrypted. And you have to know that key. So it does that pretty well. The enterprise version is a little better in some ways, and that's kind of how GoBlue is based on. We connect, and then we make an encrypted connection after we authenticate into the network. So you'll see some terms. So TKIP, Temporal Key Integrity Protocol. So that is how we are actually hoping to send that key. And so you'll see that you can either do it TKIP or PSK. PSK is the pre-shared key. So on my home device, I have it set up so it's my name. That would be my pre-shared key. I don't. It's much more complicated than that, but that pre-shared key. So if I have to share my key out with somebody, that's pre-shared key. And that's the most common thing that your home routers are going to do. So, less than 20 characters makes it very vulnerable to cracking. Now the reality is, if I'm searching for some way to get on a network, and I have to go to a lot of trouble, I'm going to find another method. So there is that. But under 20 characters or so, there are ways we can crack those. A couple days of processing in some cases. And we'll gather that data. And if it's a very busy network, like something like GoBlue, we could probably gather that data in a day or so. Enough data to be able to do that. So one of the problems is that key sharing. Somehow I have to get you that key. So you really have to share and change that on a pretty regular basis. So at my house, we change it fairly frequently because we'll have people come visit, and I don't care if they have the Wi-Fi key while they're there. So we change that on a pretty regular basis. So WPA is not perfect. And the second version has a couple of differences, but again, it's got a personal and enterprise mode. Most of the time you're going to be in that personal mode because you're not going to set up a Radius server or a Taxus server. So when we do something like an enterprise server like GoBlue, we have a little different protocol on the back end. And so you'll see that we have this lightweight EAP, which is a Cisco only thing. And then we have a Microsoft Windows version. So you'll see a whole lot of different ways we can share credentials. You don't need to memorize those. If you get to a point in a company where you need a wireless system, and you need something the caliber of something like we have here for GoBlue, you need to put in 100 access points. You're going to probably outsource that. So if they say, oh, well, we'll just set those up as open access points, and whoa, no, stop. You'll be able to see that terminology and understand it. So one of the things we do put in, you guys actually go through what's called a captive portal. And that captive portal, when you first log into GoBlue at the first of the year, you have to put in a username and a password. So in other words, you're giving them information. If your parents come here to visit and they're a guest and you want to get them information onto the network, there's a way to do that through a guest credentials, and it does the same thing. You're giving them information. You're also agreeing to whatever quality or standards or whatever else it says in there. So if you look at ours, it's probably saying something about you can't cheat if you use GoBlue and all different kinds of things. So that captive portal, if you've been in a hotel, a lot of hotels use captive portals. You have to log in and say, oh yes, I'm guest Griffin and I'm in hotel room 325, and then you can get your wireless access. So there is some hope. We can do WPA, and I can search for those rogue access points. And there's a couple of things I can do with them. So we can search for them physically. All right. In a lot of cases, our wireless access controller will also search the network and look for characteristics of that. But most of the time, it's an access point. Because that access point not only sends out a signal and receives it from your computer, but it can also see the other access points. And when it sees one that it does not like, or that is different, or that we have on our list that's not authorized, we can actually take some tactics. And that same RF jamming that we said is a way to take down somebody else's network, we can actually do against rogue networks. But we can also locate them. So by locating where it is in the building, we can actually go out and physically then turn them off and find them. And so apparently, the bank that shall not be named in Kansas City, not now too far from a Hilton Garden Inn, didn't have that ability, or they just ignored it or turned it off. And that's a fairly common thing in a higher end access point and controller system. So other things you're going to get to. So on a higher end system, you're going to be able to actually adjust how much power they transmit. So we could turn the power down on the ones at the edge of our building. We can change where the antennas are. We might also place them up on the ceiling. We do that on the ceiling for a couple of reasons. It gives us a great signal in the building, but it also keeps people from stealing them. And you would think nobody's going to steal an access point, right? It happens. People will take things for no reason. So that power level, we can adjust those. So the first thing normally a company is going to come out and do is they're going to do what's called a site survey. And so they're going to come out here and they'll set up a couple of test points, and then they're walking around with an antenna and a laptop and trying to figure out where the signal is the best so they can balance how many access points you want and need and can afford with what kind of coverage you need. So companies that do this, so something like our campus, when they first built our network a few years ago, so I think it was 6 years now at some point, it was about $500,000 to build our network for the wireless. They just updated 2 years ago, and it was another $350,000. So wireless is not cheap, and doing it right is not cheap. And that doesn't guarantee that it's still always going to be the best you can get. But the reality is we're so used to it, we have to come out and we have to continually revise it. Wireless is not a set and forget and we'll never have to deal with it again model. If you looked at, has anybody been to a Husker game? Have you been able to connect to Wi-Fi at the Husker game now? They've actually got their system set up. They can handle close to 50,000 connections. If we had 50,000 people try to connect to our network here, it would probably explode and catch fire and melt down, and we wouldn't have school for a day or two. But so all of these pieces, we need the appropriate size, we need the security right. If you run into and you walk into a small business and you see they have something with the words D-Link, Belkin, and it looks obviously much like this one, and that's what they're running their entire wireless and their entire operation on, yikes, guys, I would get very nervous very quickly because this provides little to no protection. And especially if you walk in and it's open access, anybody can get on that network, I would be a little scared about my information there. So when you go into the doctor's office and you see this kind of thing going on and you go, man, well, let me see if I can look around and find some folders. If you do that, I'd probably change doctors. So we have a lot of pieces this week. So if you will look in week 10's folder, I get it moved over. So good news, no discussion board. There is only an assignment and a quiz this week. We're going to look at a lot of different things. So make sure you have read chapter 9. And we're going to do some emulators and some Wi-Fi in here live. And hopefully we can record and get a piece of that and see what that looks like. That Google video is from a couple years ago and it's kind of interesting. And we're going to look at some of the other ones. So the emulator site, I have to rebuild the link because apparently I just bagged on D-Link and they apparently have changed that. They had a really great emulator site so we could actually look at some of their stuff, and their site has changed a little bit. So if you get there, it doesn't actually go a whole lot of places now. It just kind of goes to D-Link's homepage. So I do need to fix that because I was looking at those earlier. So the Google Guide is very interesting. We're going to look at some forensics toolkits. And so what I would encourage you to do is take a look. Last week you had to look at a toolkit and find one. This is one that actually goes through a really quick overview of the system that they use. Now, it's a sales ad. Be sure you're aware of that. But it's a company called FTK and their particular product. And you can see what then those do. So let me pause.